Welcome everyone to our TCCOP session. For today, our topic will be brain-based insights for high-performing teams. This session takes place every fourth Wednesday of the month and are designed to unlock your team's full potential by aligning a shared vision, clear goals, and purpose. By sharing insights and having meaningful conversations, we aim to strengthen team coaching practices and drive positive change. Thank you for being here, everybody. Let's get started. We're delighted to welcome our speaker, Himani Jaiswal, for today. With over 20 years of experience, Himani, an applied neuroscience life and leadership coach, and a mentor coach at the International Coaching Federation. Her work focuses on enhancing emotional intelligence and using brain-based coaching methods to help leaders build healthy work cultures and thriving businesses. She partners with clients to unlock their potential, drive transformation, and support lasting personal and professional growth. We're so happy to have you here. Please drop in your questions in the Q&A box or in the chat box. We will address it at the end of the session. We will also have a feedback poll, so please do stay back. The sessions are being recorded and a replay will be available for you in the future. Over to you, Himani. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Anjali, and thank you everyone for joining in. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as per wherever we are in this, I would say this whole wide world. But I think for the world that we live in today, it is this small little world which is connected through so many means now. And which is what makes our topic today even more exciting and valuable. Because when you talk about something like teams, no longer are we, sitting at a place where we are sitting in one office in one part of the world. For me, that would be New Delhi, India. And I have like 4 people working with me, and we meet every morning over a cup of tea or coffee, and we say, okay, this is the plan for the day. Now we have geographically spread hybrid teams which are working all across the world, even if they are, and they may not be even meeting, say virtually, even like say, Zoom calls. I mean, and they might be just meeting, say, once a fortnight or once a week or whenever. I mean, so the world has really shrunk, but when we can also say that a lot of distance has come in terms of, I wouldn't call it distance, I would just call it a lot of change has come in terms of the way we were used to working. So I think all of us have felt that change, and especially after COVID, with our new working structures. And it's all the more important that we kind of go back to the basics, and which is why we chose today's topic, which is brain-based insights for high performing. I think high performing teams is like, I usually don't like using the word high performing, because I think as far as teams are concerned, there's much more to it than performance. Performance is one aspect of it, and it's good that you're performing well and you're feeling good about it. But at the end of the day, if you're creating value in the team, if you're happy in working in that place and the people working with you are happy, then you've really, kind of done a lot of justice to where you are. And thank you so much for all the inputs that are coming in the chat. I really sincerely appreciate them, because what keeps the session going, and for that matter, what keeps a team going, is communication. And somebody did mention communication when Anjali asked the question right in the beginning, and you're absolutely right. If we are looking at collaboration, somebody talked about collaborative teams, somebody talked about communication, and these are the actual hallmarks of what teams are all about. Today, we're going to go into something slightly, I wouldn't say different, but something which is very interesting, which we usually don't, cover when we talk about teams and teamwork. And that's why I thought that it'll be particularly interesting for all of us to get inside it. Now, before we even start, of course, this is the topic, that how teams think, decide, and perform. Of course, this is a huge area. So we're going to, we are going to just like kind of go through some some things that we can in this 1 hour or 45 minutes that we have together. But I would sincerely encourage any of you, or each one of you who are interested in this field, and it's such a dynamic field growing every day, to enrich yourself. To There is a lot that is available, not only on the firstly on the internet. Of course, there is some things which are available, but I have found in this, I'm just sharing with you, that I have found in this period of time, over these 10, 12 years that I've been working with teams, especially, that sometimes it can be very confusing, because a lot of information comes to you at a rapid speed, and with AI coming in, I could even, think of preparing a presentation like this in like 5 minutes. But, you have to tell yourself that what is the value that the people are going to get out of this. And then you stop yourself, and then you go back to the basics again, and you see, okay, what is it? So again, I would recommend to any of you that even if you want to get a little bit out of something, read less, but read where from the sources that come to you, which have value to them. And for the best way for me to suggest that would be to probably join a course, to do a group learning. Because what happens there is that you're committed for that time to really give yourself, like you're doing so right now. This is a commitment that you're making to your time, and therefore all your energies and all your, most in all probability, will be here for this time, and then you'll do something else. So this was just a little brain-based insight on how we learn, and how human beings usually get sidetracked if they are doing something else. So teams are no different. Teams are made up of human beings. And when we talk about teams, the first thing that we would have is the next slide. So the first thing is, like, I'm not going back into the basics of how human brain is wired, because that would take a lot of time. But look at it this way, that as I just said, that the teams are a group of people working together. At the end of the day, we are all human beings. Now, we know that we make our decisions based on emotions and logic. Actually, a good way of putting it is that we make emotional decisions, and then we rationalize them. So this is a well-researched thing. We might like to think otherwise, that no, we are very, very rational people, and I always think something out and then I make my decision. Absolutely, you do. So there's nobody's taking away your critical thinking skills away from you, or calling you illogical or whatever, nothing like that. It's just that our emotions are a very, very important part of the way we live in this world and we operate. So what happens is that usually it's a combination. When people call themselves right brained or left brained, or when people say that I don't think emotionally, I only think logically, they are actually not really accurate. So it's we are a blend. We are a happy blend, I would say, because otherwise we would be probably very, very either very boring human beings, or either very sloppy human beings, because we would be nowhere. The balance wouldn't be there. So our decisions are usually based on emotions and logic, and when we go either extreme, we usually figure out that, okay, something is amiss, and I need to course correct. So teams are no different. Teams also, when they come together, and we know very quickly, a team is like a group of people who've come together for a common cause, and that common cause is what really aligns them. So the team as such becomes an entity. It's like almost one living organism. So then we don't call them this group of people. Then this team, whatever we may call it, alpha, beta, gamma, this team is one entity. So we are saying that this team is making its decision based on emotion and logic. Then it's no longer that one person. It's no longer, Preeti or Anjali, or anybody else, or Himani, which is making the decision. We are calling this out to say that this team is making their decisions based on emotional logic. That's how their brain is primed, and that's how they're operating as well. And what does this brain react to? So in the team, they'll be having a lot of dynamics, like team dynamics, in motivation, collaboration, as somebody just mentioned beautifully. And thereby, because all these things are there in a team structure, when we understand the brain science behind how we can help this team or this group of people who have decided to come together for this common cause really create a high performing or a high value creating environment, then we would go a long way into making that team a very, very successful one, right? And that's the background of the genesis of where we are trying to do this. So the next slide. Okay. Now, in this, of course, there's lots of theories that I could have, explained to you about the brain, the human brain, the teams, and everything. But I wanted to, because of how we want to respect time and really leave you with something concrete, we are going to talk about this very, very interesting model. Some of you may have heard about it earlier. And even if you have, there are so many interpretations and so many ways it can be used. You will still find it useful to be able to understand this. Now, the SCARF model, and it's a very beautiful word, I would say, because especially for all not only women, I would say men also, if we can use our scarves beautifully. I like to say that I like to wear my scarves in various ways. And so this was introduced by this gentleman called Dr. David Rock. He's one of my mentors, and I have had the privilege of studying with him, so has been a wonderful journey. And of course, this is totally based on research. When we say research, means neuroscience research. What is research? Which is backed up by facts. It usually becomes your research points, and because when it is proven again and again and again, right? And explains. So David Rock explains that in generally speaking, there are 5 drivers, domains, drivers. You can call them any aspects that influence a human being's social interaction and motivation. Now, I'm saying in teams, but this generally applies individually also. Like you can use it for yourself also. That okay, what is am I pronouncing the name? Okay, is that Boma? Boma or Boma? If I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, please pardon me. So if it is Boma or it's Havra or it's Preeti or it's we have somebody by the name of Lenovo. Well, I think that belongs to a laptop, but maybe yes, there's a person behind that Lenovo, right? And of course, there's Lisa. And so if I say that, okay, these domains are, and they perhaps make a team together. So all their drivers together make this team, okay? And obviously they are being influenced individually also, and they're being influenced together also by these drivers. Right now, for today's discussion, we will be focusing on the team behavior. And I'll remind you that when we talk about team behavior, it means that thank you, Bama, that it is that we are talking about one cohesive behavior. It may not be, so we're talking about the team as if it's one entity, right? So don't forget that, because otherwise it tends to get confusing. But we can also apply this individually. So Burma can also say that, what is my driver? Like, in fact, you can ask yourself this question right now. What is my biggest driver amongst these 5? Let me quickly explain them. When I say status is my driver, what do I really mean? That how do I perceive myself in terms of my relative importance to others? That status, call it a status symbol, that okay, for me, my importance, my position is very important. So I'm pretty status driven. Yeah. The other is certainty, that like some people are very, very careful about saying that, how certain is my job? How is my job going to stay or not? I mean, with these uncertain times, I don't even know what's going to happen. And sometimes people feel that in the workplace a lot these days. So it is my ability, not really my ability, but the dynamics of it is such that I am comfortable when I'm able to predict the future, which means that I know my job is secure. I know my husband is not going to leave me. I'm not going to get a divorce. Just kidding. Or I am, I have food on the table and basics like that. So the people who are driven by certainty seem to thrive when they are feeling more certain. The third driver is autonomy. Again, people who are autonomous in nature, they want to have control over events. Control needn't be necessarily bad. It's just like saying that, okay, I know that this today I've come to work. I know what I need to do, and I'm not going all over. I mean, there's no mismatch happening, and you're not telling me from one person who's coming from somewhere and saying, okay, this file is also up to be done. That is also happening. I seem to be in control. I like to have things in control, in order, or otherwise also I know that things are not going awry. The fourth one is relatedness. A lot of people have this driver. I mean, like others, this feeling of comradeship, this feeling of sense of safety in a group. And our teams are primed a lot with relatedness, but yeah, a lot of times, and I have this sense of safety with others, meaning that am I liked in this group? Am I liked in my team? Do people like me, even in social groups? I mean, a lot of people thrive on relatedness because they feel that if I'm not liked, I must be an outcast. If I'm an outcast, then I don't have any place, and then I don't feel very good. So, and because they're so driven by that, a lot of their decisions seem to come from that driver. And the last but not the least is fairness, which really means that, okay, in a team, are you feeling that, okay, is X person being given partial treatment? Is somebody being given just being treated poorly because of certain factors like race, ethnicity, or whatever? Am I being treated fair? So for them, some people like that, fairness is a very, very big driver. Any questions in this? Anything that is not understood in this, please ask me at this stage, because we will move on understanding that yes, you've understood the basic of the scarf, and then I will relate it more. So it'll become a little more. I'll explain it through a lot of examples. But anything, any doubt out here, please feel free to unmute or share it in the chat. I will be most happy to take care of that. Meanwhile, I'm moving on. If there's something, please do ask. Now, because we're talking about brain science today, let's talk about the brain science behind scarf. Why did Dr. David Rock think about it? So our brain typically, from the way we are primed, when we were developing as human beings, and our brain started developing from the back, from here, and it's a bottom up approach. So it started developing at the back here, which is the primitive brain, and then it went on to the what we call as the emotional brain, and then the prefrontal cortex, which is the most late, newly developed part of our brain, right? And so when we say the primitive brain, remember we were hunters and gatherers and people who were like, when we were developing. So obviously the biggest danger that one could look out was for, wild animals or things that when you're going out to hunt. So an animal would come after you, you could die. So, you have very, very basic reactions. You can either fight, uh, flight, freeze, and a lot of that came later, the fawn one that which was added. But basically, you're primed that where I look. I mean, I'm constantly scanning my environment that I am for threats, which means that my necessity to feel safe is very high. Now, it's not as like that, okay, I come to sit in a chair and I'm like looking at it if there are, germs here or there. Some people do that also. But it doesn't work like that. It works as a subconscious level that we want to feel safe. So we want to obviously be in a place. I can only work if I feel right now there's somebody standing in front of me with a knife in his hand. I mean, an extreme example, I don't think I would be taking the session, right? Or even if, and emotionally, if I am, weak somehow and my son is not feeling well, and which did happen like, last week, and I had to actually cancel a session because I was not feeling primed enough to be able to handle that session. And I thought that I wouldn't do justice to it. So, so our brain is wired to minimize threats and maximize rewards. Why do we see a lot of people, especially teenagers and young people, doing a lot of things? Instant gratification. You want to get the high. That's maximizing rewards, because after all, whatever we do, even when we start working somewhere, one reward is of course your salary, what you get out of that, and the other is a lot of other of these drivers that I just talked about. If you're feeling good about your work, if your status is good, if you're treated fairly, if your autonomy is good, all that is going to maximize your rewards. And at the same time, the reverse of that is going to maximize your threats. Yeah. So then we explain that when any of these elements of the scarf are threatened, meaning you don't feel them, it is after all a matter of your perception and also things happening, because you're the one who's feeling them as a team. The brain, it does, it activates the limbic system. The limbic system is right here at the back here, where your emotional center is, and which in turn causes a defensive response. Like I said, you can either fight it, you can freeze, or you can flee, which means run. This is the basic, the basic defensive responses that the brain has. The most primitive ones, it comes to this part only later. Once you've done your initial reaction and you've done your this thing, somebody says something to you, or you see you're walking on a path and you see something which is a snake like, what will you do? Will you go there first and investigate? Is it a snake, or is it I think maybe it's just a wire or something like that? The first instinct will be to, jump back or run or freeze, or like, whatever. Like, you won't, probably even fighting won't come to you. It depends on the situation. But you may just then, because you paused enough and then you go carefully out there, or you send somebody to find out, it might just be a rope. And then the limb and front portion kicks in and say, oh, this was there. Why? Because you've been primed to look for threats. And also your earlier experience has told you that anything resembling something like that could be a snake. So we are primed with our experiences, and that's how memories are formed. So that's how drivers also work. One time you feel happy with status, it reinforces itself, and you say, status, I become very happy when I do this. So that's also the science behind it. On the other hand, when these, yeah, the back to that only, Anjali, the back, this thing. Okay, we are there only. No, the previous slides, Anjali. Previous. Mm, the next. Yeah, here only. Yeah, there only. Yeah, here. Yeah. So, yeah, we were on the fact that if it's causing a defensive response, on the other hand, when your scarf drivers are given a positive reinforcement, then I was just talking about this area, this prefrontal cortex, that supports your rational thinking and collaboration, because then you're not defensive anymore. This portion is not kicked in, causing a problem in the thinking process. So you're thinking from this portion, the rational decision making, or we call it the executive center. Thereby, you're making your decisions from here. You're feeling certain, you're feeling status wise, you're fine. So you are in a comfortable space. Thereby, you're able to think rationally, you're able to think with your whole self, and thereby, you are actually contributing to the team with its totality. Now we can go to the next slide. So this is the brain science behind a scarf, that when you're feeling defensive, you will not operate at your best. When you're feeling reinforced, then you will. So this is probably this, it's the same thing which is, repeating itself in slightly detail, that we just said that our brain constantly scans the environment for threats and rewards. In a team setting, understanding these dynamics becomes very crucial, because our engagement and our motivation comes from there. Now, what would be an example, supposing when you say when an individual perceives a threat in a scarf domain, supposing you're talking about unfair treatment or lack of autonomy. The brain says, as I just told you, fight or flight, and this thereby becomes you'll reduce your cognitive capacity, emotional withdrawal, resistance to collaboration, and all those things will happen. On the other hand, when you have a reward response, the scarf elements are doing very well. The brain will release dopamine. Dopamine is your feel-good factor neurochemical, and you will be enhancing all the factors which come to your PFC, which are motivation, creativity, teamwork, and a lot of other good and happy places to be in. Right. So this is just the background of SCARF and how brain science really supports that this SCARF model actually really works. We can go to the next slide. Now, let's look at some very basic examples so that we have it more clearer, this model. If you look at the scarf domain, let's look at status. What would be a threat example? You publicly criticize me in a meeting. My status is obviously challenged. So it's no good, and it's a no-brainer that it's obviously affecting my status. in sudden changes in the project scope. I'm told that you are no longer a part of this project, or your role is now not this, it is this. My certainty is challenged. um, Autonomy. Sometimes we see that in organizations, a lot of micromanagement is done by leaders. They tell you that no, you are in charge of this project, but each and every step they will ask you, now what's going on? Now tell me, report to me by the end of the day. Send me a mail to tell me how is it going. So my autonomy, which I feel that okay, I'm responsible and in charge, is really going down the drain there. Relatedness. I don't feel a part of key discussions. I'm feeling that I'm not really a part of this thing. So what team? And fairness, that okay, somebody suddenly just talked about promotion, and here we are. I didn't even know promotions were happening, and somebody just got promoted out of turn or whatever. Something happened. These are all threat examples for your scarves. On the other hand, your reward examples would be your recognition in front of peers. Who wouldn't like to be recognized and that too in front of your peers? Similarly, for certainty, a very clear roadmap and expectations. Autonomy, your flexibility in your work style. You could have a style where you would tell instructions, basic instructions need to be given, but you're flexible enough to tell people that okay, now from now on, you can use your autonomy to do it as you like. Relatedness is, obviously your team bonding activities, your idea of being together. And fairness is, the opposite of that you have a very transparent system of performance reviews. So these are very basic examples, but just to give you an idea of how, we could work, we could think of threats and rewards. Please, anything coming up for anybody, please share in the chat. And also if any doubts or something that you're not finding difficult to understand, please ask me, and I'll be happy to explain it a little further. Okay, we can go to the next slide. Okay, so obviously there are advantages. We've already talked about that. So all the things that you've already mentioned in the chat and I've been talking about is today. In fact, in the evening, I was watching a seminar on psychological safety and how much it is. If anybody is interested, Amy Edmondson has done some remarkable work on psychological safety, and if you would like to check it out, it's very, very useful and in a very, very easy to understand language. Culture, everything changes when you are applying the scarf and it's working well. So we can go to the next slide. Okay, so now just to understand this and to kind of, I'm not actually reading the chat. So if there's something come in, then I read out. Okay, fine. All right. So if we'll just understand this through a case study, which is um, it's actually something that I've actually worked in. So I could probably, write down this case study and say this was a hedge fund, and it was operating, and the team was really struggling with a lot of people leaving, and people were not motivated, they were disengaged, and leadership. They then obviously, they called coaches and they called people, and one introduced the scarf based strategies with them. So what they started doing was, again, simple things to start with, but which really helped. What they started doing was they started recognizing the team's contribution publicly. They provided clear progression pathways. They provided teams to set their own work priorities. They implemented mentorship programs. They ensured that there would be an equal workload distribution and transparency in promotions. What was the outcome? And because this is something that I've been a part of, I can actually happily report that the employee engagement increased by 25% and attrition actually reduced by 15% within 6 months. Now, this sounds very simplistic and saying that, okay, do this, and this will add up. There's obviously a lot more that goes into it, and you have to actually put these things in action and be consistent about them. The brain, again, likes a lot of consistency. How are habits formed? Habits are formed by doing something again and again and again till the brain gets a hang of it and you start understanding that this is my reality. And also, for people to trust you, you have to do it again and again and again as leaders and as team leaders, people who are taking care of teams, that you make it a habit that you're doing, making sure that the people around you are feeling their scarf drivers and how they're feeling it, right? So then we could see the next slide. Okay, now let's understand that, okay, but when we're talking about leaders, or let's say maybe we using this term a bit broadly, anybody who's working in a team, maybe a team leader or even a part of being a team. So when we are talking about practical application, which means things that you can do on a daily basis, on an everyday basis, nothing that is there that, okay, once in a while you pick it up and you do a workshop and you can use these things and it will happen. What about status? Now we know enough about status that we can actually, really give our own examples, but I'm helping you with a few, which means the first practical application would be that use inclusive language and acknowledge contributions, basically about really enhancing and appreciating the status of if a person is coming from that status driver, right? Then talking about peer recognition programs to ensure team members appreciate each other, assign mentorship or leadership roles to enhance a sense of importance. Remember, status comes from that sense of feeling important, feeling good about yourself, feeling that you matter. Again, you can easily apply these, as I said in the beginning, to your families, to your relationships, to anywhere in life, because these stand universal. We are talking about teams today, but please feel free to use the scarf wherever you feel that there could be a challenge in my life, and you could use scarf to be able to understand where is the challenge coming in from. And skill development. So I'm nominating somebody for a skill development program, and obviously he or she will feel good about it, that I've been given the chance. This is as far as status is concerned. Let's look at what is it for certainty in the next slide. Certainty, for the person who would want certainty, would want clear job expectations. Day one, I want to know what I am doing. My career path should also be like, in a team should be known that this is where we are going. Obviously organizational updates will also reduce uncertainty. Structured feedback systems to employee track progress. Also encouraging goal setting and ensuring alignment with company objectives, because that goes hand in hand with how a team is progressing. Similarly, let's look at what is it for autonomy. These are some practical examples. As I said, that there could be many others which you could actually apply on your own once you understand the concept. Allow teams to make decisions on project approaches within set guidelines. Then we talk about flexible work arrangements. We reduce micromanagement, which does not go well with autonomy. And we focus on outcomes rather than on process. And we can create these small teams of teams, like autonomous task forces, to solve specific challenges, because that's how people learn how to lead on their own, and you're actually empowering them by giving them more autonomy. Okay? And then the last of the relatedness aspect of it, which is the next slide, which is, of course, this we are all pretty familiar with, because relatedness is a driver which is pretty universal. We organize bonding activities, we do cross-cultural collaboration, we have open door policies and with bosses where leaders are accessible, and we develop buddy systems, peer coaching, or like hand-in-hand coaching to enhance team bonding. And last but not the least, which is fairness, which is the next slide, which is that for a person who's seeking fairness, it would be very important to ensure that you are having in a team a transparent decision-making process, nothing happening behind the doors and hush-hush kind of thing. Standardize the performance evaluations to avoid favoritism, address and workplace biases to maintain equity, equality, and of course, have discussions occasionally that what are the concerns that are coming up as far as fairness is concerned in team meetings. So this was a very quick, run through of what could be the practical applications for any of us working in a team setting. It could be for you as a leader. It could be you as a team member, because nobody's stopping us from implementing this for ourselves and for others, or making it as a suggestion. So we'll go to the next slide. Okay, so again, I think that examples work a lot. Therefore, there's another thing that another project that one was a part of, and this is a tech company, and pretty similar example. This software development team, they struggled with their morale due to unclear project priorities and frequent changes. So the company naturally, because things were unclear, they applied, we asked them to apply SCARF. So then, I probably won't repeat because a lot of things are, being repeated here, because they're different things would require probably some different practical applications. But I think you get the gist that, okay, what is it that we do when we are feeling our status is feeling challenged? What is it that we can do when certainty is a problem? So once we do the micro examination, that what is the case like, where are we hitting a dead end, and we can identify the driver, which is the most important step. In a team, you'll find that not all the drivers are being hit all the time. You'll find that, okay, maybe sometimes a particular person is in a team, they're struggling with status, and the other people may be struggling with relatedness. But then you have to take the team as a single entity together, and then see that what is it that the team is struggling with. So remember, there's a difference between the team members and the team. As a team, they might be struggling with a lack of identity. That what are we here for, actually? What are we even doing? They may not relate to their purpose. They may not be knowing that why is this important? What are we doing? As Simon Sinek says, that your why is the most important. So maybe a team is struggling with status, or maybe a team is struggling with certainty. They think that we are a very ad hoc team. Maybe we'll just be dissolved the moment this project is over, because we've just come together to do this, and I don't think we are very, very important. And or autonomy, that they feel that the team leader is always directing them. So it could be any of the drivers that would be coming in their way. We can go to the next slide. And this is again retail sales team. It faced low motivation due to a lot of incentives were inconsistent, which means uh, fairness was their problem, or an unclear career path, certainty. So when you're reading the terms only, you can now identify that, okay, which of the drivers are being challenged, and then it becomes easy that to introduce what. So for certainty, you give people sales targets, you give them incentives, clarify them. Okay, this is what you get if you do this. For fairness, you say, okay, you standardize processes, because then it doesn't become partial. So, there is a system behind the system. So that's why we call SCARF a very scientific, research-based model. Right? There are lots of others. I mean, and with due respect to a lot of other program models, I mean, each one has its own merit. It says that when we use something repeatedly, you find the merits of that, and that's why I'm sharing this with you, because it works well with teams. And the next slide. Okay, now this is a very, very important or a relevant one for as far as teams are concerned, and that's why I'm going to, spend a little time on this. Now, this is how you can very, very simply just take a piece of paper in your offices, and you can do this with yourself as an individual exercise. You can do this with your teams. You can do this with your team members, and each one doing their self-analysis and then the team analysis. What you simply need to do is that you need to, plot these 5 drivers in this, kind of this heat map here, or any other tool that you choose. I've just taken this as an example. And when you put in your points, like, on a scale of 1 to 10, or whatever metrics you take, you will find that the team is, operating on in a particular shape. Like this is the shape here, the blue one, which is highlighted, is where they are. This is just a graphical representation of from the radar chart, that this is how your map radar chart looks like. So, but what is important to take away from it is that what you will see visually, and sometimes some of us see visually things pretty clearly, and we are able to identify that, and which is what I'd like you to reflect and take away also, is that which domain do you need from your manager? Supposing you're working with somebody, your team leader. Now, which is the domain? Would you want more relatedness from him? Would you want more certainty from him or her? Would you want more fairness, status, or a combination? And what do you need most to be good at your job? Which of these drivers apply to you? What do you need more? Which means that Do I need to be probably more conscious of my, my status, my certainty? What is it that I need to do to align to my why? Yeah. So then you make a mark on the diagram that, okay, you plot that, okay, this driver is where I need to work upon, right? That's the first part of it. The second part of it is that which domain does your team need from you? Now we go to self, right? Which is that, and what do they need most to be good at their job? Make a mark on the diagram. So this is just a fancy way of explaining that, okay, we need to map our drivers in whatever way appropriate. This is just an example that, okay, one way of looking at it is that what do you need from your team leader, and the other is what do you need to give back to the team. What driver do you need to be good at or be aware of that you're not paying attention to, which is harming the team, yeah, or which is coming in your way. And thereby, the reflection that comes is that you have to actually sit and ask yourself these questions: that how do you know for sure that this is what your team needs? And that would be done by a lot of doing these exercises to and fro, because as I shared right in the beginning, that we are a complex set of human beings. We have, all of us would be having all five drivers in various permutations and combinations. So you might need to do this individually, you might need to do it as a collective. That's totally your call. And it also depends on the need of the hour. If you're talking about a team has reached a place where the team is no longer feeling energized and coming to work, or collective problem, then you would probably do a team diagnosis. If there are certain people that you've identified who need to see some things are not going well with them, then you probably need to do an individual exercise and work it out with them. And the second reflection could be, is your team's domain different from what you need for yourself? So maybe the team has come out with the whole category that they don't feel relatedness to be very strong in their team. They don't feel that. But as a team leader, you don't identify much for that, as much of that with yourself. You don't need that relatedness. You're okay even if it's not there. So what would you do? Would the team's interest come in front of you? Probably it would, because you're working as a team leader. And obviously, there'll be realizations at the end of the exercise. Usually, what people realize is that sometimes your individual drivers, are very different from your team drivers. The team is operating at some place, like they may be operating at relatedness, and you are operating at probably a place where you are wanting to be certain about certain things, right? And therefore there could be a mismatch. So when you see things visually, you're able to understand that, okay, right now the need of the hour is that I need to do this for my team, and I need to be on the same page as them, and thereby make a system where relatedness becomes our driver for the day, for the moment. And my own driver I can deal with on myself, because that's my own need. And similarly, other people will also work on their individual drivers. So it was a very simplistic example. Of course, it can go deeper, and it has a lot of loads of questions to it and loads of matrices to it. But that's not the objective of this session. The objective of the session was to introduce you to SCARF, to understand that in teams, SCARF is a very, very important, has a very important place, because it deals with all the basic needs or drivers that human beings operate from. And thereby, when used in a collective, they become your base point or your data collection point, that where is the team and what does it need what does it need ecologically to survive today? Where is it holding itself back? Where can it go forward? And how, using these drivers, we can move the team forward towards team effectiveness, team collaboration, team communication, and overall team effectiveness. And if there would be another slide, I think. Yeah, these are some references. You could, of course, the basic one being David Rock's. It's a brain-based model. It's available on ResearchGate, but that's more like a research-based theory. But if anybody is really interested, then there is this book called Dr. David Rock's Quiet Leadership. Yeah, it's a beautiful book, again, written very simply and interesting if anybody is interested. And of course, there's Daniel Goleman, his emotional intelligence, because it's part of that. And there is Brené Brown book, Dare to Lead, which is something that is an good to read if one actually gets down to that place. But yeah, Dr. David Rock's Quiet Leadership, a very, very good resource for somebody who wants to really become the kind of leader that people in this time, today's times, would like to, work with. Right. So this was it from my side today. But I'm happy to take on any discussion and questions and even observations. Why only questions? Why only questions? There could be observations about what we've just shared. Was it insightful? Was it something that you will be able to use? What was it? Something that is relevant to your teams and your ways of working today? You're most welcome. And yeah, I'm around. So if there's anything that is coming up, please share to me. Yes, that's all from me. Otherwise, Anjali, but I'm happy to take on anything that comes up. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Himani, for that insightful session. I think we've learned a lot, new perspectives, something very new for me as well. And we can definitely look at it one more time. It's very helpful. Thank you so much for your time and effort. We have a few announcements. Yeah, we have a few announcements. Sorry, yeah. So the next LCCOP session will be held on the 16th of April. And please note the timing here. It is at 9 a.m. EST now. Yeah. Please scan in the QR code there. The next TCCOP session, that will be held on the 23rd of April at the same time, 12 p.m. EST. Use the QR code there, please. Do note that the third Wednesdays of the month will be for leadership coaching sessions, and team coaching will be on fourth Wednesdays of every month. We also have something in store for those who are ready to elevate their coaching skills. So please do register for the APF certified professional coach here. The QR code is there. We will be starting in May on the 12th. And for those coffee lovers out there, please join us for Agile People Ops Lean coffee session. This one is going to be a little different. It's dynamic, no agenda for the discussion. It's just you who's setting this space for the conversation. So please join them. It's on the 26th March, 4 p.m. Argentina time. Please note that. And don't forget to join our APO Global community. You will have all of this there. You can find like-minded people as well. Please register in and avail of whatever opportunities you'll have to learn from. Please do wait for our feedback poll before you all leave. It's really crucial for us. Stay motivated for learning more and joining our webinars. Don't forget to join our community portal. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure having you all and hosting. This is Anjali signing off. Thank you so much, Himani, once again.